So it's time to do the fifth wheel lubrication. Usually like to do this twice a year. Go right through and lubricate all the moving parts. Make sure everything's going to roll smoothly down the road and not wear out or corrode. So I'll go through and show you what I do with the different parts of my fifth wheel. You might want to check with your manufacturer and see if there's anything different. Every RV and trailer has some different specifications, but this is what I found works best with mine. So I have a few different types of lubricant here. I got the good old grease gun, and that's filled with kind of a bearing grease for my wheel bearings, and I also use it in my power lift jacks on the front of the rig. And then I have what they call slide out dry lube. This is my favorite one from Protectol, and it also has a rust inhibitor, so I like to coat the rails with that, and also use that on my rear jacks. We've got silicone lubricant, and you need this specifically for the TV antenna. You want to lube your TV antenna twice a year, and you want to use silicone because inside the TV antenna there's a rubber O-ring, and if you use something else it might eat that O-ring. Also, the silicone will lubricate the O-ring so you won't get any leaks into your rig. So anything that has rubber, you want to use silicone on it. I'll use it some places like locks and different things. My other favorite one is white lithium grease. And this particular one sprays out kind of wet, but then it dries and won't run around. So I like to use that in places on my hitch and locks and things like that, where I want it to stay in place, and but I don't want it to be moist where it would pick up any dirt and debris. So yeah, there's my lubricants. Now let's get to work and start lubricating the beast. Here's my fifth wheel hitch I've pulled out of the truck. So usually once a year I like to pull it out and give it a good inspection and clean it all off and re-lubricate all the moving parts. It's a good time to retorque the bolts and stuff like that. But I'll usually start with washing it down with soap and water, then a wire brush, and get into the jaws and clean off any loose debris, stuff like that. On my particular model, I have kind of a slide mechanism that slides up and down. So same thing, I'll get in there and with a rag clean it off. I find if I use some lithium grease and just spray it on, then with the rag I can give it a good wipe down, so I'm kind of cleaning and lubricating at the same time. Check for rust, check the springs, make sure everything looks good in there. This one's kind of cool. It's a slide. It slides right across the jaws down here. This is going to be loud, but it makes a pretty positive connection. That's for sure. So once I have it all lubricated underneath, I'll look at where it goes into the bed rails here. I have some spring locks that lock it in place. So same with that, I'll brush them down and use some of that lithium grease. It also has kind of a anti-rust protector in there too, so it'll clean it up. Okay, back on the top, the only place I put some real grease is right where the kingpin sits. So I'll put in a bit of same grease I use for the wheel bearings, because that spot takes a lot of pressure when you're going down the road. All the pulling weight's right on that area. And that grease will collect some dirt, so every few weeks I'll clean it off and re-lube it. But that's about it. All ready to go again. Nice and easy to pull. And that's how I lube up my hitch. The lubricant I use is a white lithium grease that dries completely dry, so you don't want it to be attracting dirt and debris as you're going down the road. So there's many different products out there. This time I'm using one from WD-40, white lithium grease. It goes on, covers and protects it from rust, but when it dries, it'll dry up, completely dry, so it won't attract any grease or road debris and dirt, especially when you're towing through the desert. That way you don't have to keep redoing it all the time. If you put on something oily like regular WD-40, you'll end up within a few weeks you'll have all kinds of dirt and mud debris caked on your hitch. So yeah, go with a dry lubricant. While I have the hitch out, I'll clean up the bed rails as well. Remove any rust that might, and corrosion that might be on there with a wire brush. Give them a coat of the lithium grease to protect them. And also lubricate if ever do. I have a sliding bed rail, so if ever do need to move it back, makes the hitch move along that much easier. So once I have the hitch all lubed up, tightened up, and back in the truck, I'll look at the kingpin. I use one of these, I guess it's like a vinyl or some type of plastic hitch. I guess they call it a lubriplate, and that way you don't have to lubricate with grease all your hitch, which is awesome. These things work great. They just press fit on there. So I usually clean that up, make sure it's not worn out. If it is, I'll just swap it. They're 10 or 15 bucks, really cheap. Take a wire brush and clean up the pin, and usually maybe put a little bit of coat of bearing grease on. And that's about it. While I'm doing that, I'll check the torque on the bolts, make sure everything's okay there. Basically completes the lubrication of the fifth wheel hitch. So I'm underneath the living room slide out here, and I want to show you what I do to maintain and lubricate it. Now, most of the manufacturers say that these don't need lubrication at all. They're good to go without having to use lubrication, but I like to use a product called Slide Out Dry Lube. It's by Protectol, and what it does is it'll coat with a dry lube, so it won't attract any dirt or debris, but it'll stop the slide mechanisms from rusting or corroding. So that's what I do. It's up to you what you want to do, but I find it really helps with the slide, maintaining it. So it's pretty easy. You can see the teeth there. What I'll do is I'll clean that up with water and high pressure hose, and then after first I'll take a wire brush and clean out any loose debris that might be inside the teeth, and then I'll wash it off, and then once it dries, I'll just spray some of this stuff on it and into the gear mechanism down there, and I find that really works well with the slide, keeping it operating properly. One place on the slide I don't lubricate is this round cylinder. All I do is I'll clean it up and give it a good wipe down so it's nice and shiny. Another thing I do to help the slide is, you can see on mine there's kind of a plasticky coating. What I'll do with that is take some wax and put a nice heavy coating of just the same wax I use on the exterior. And I find that really makes this slippery, allows it to slide in easier, which is always better for the motor. And these here, I'll use some protectant on those so the rubber's nice and supple and doesn't grab on the way in. So be doing all those things. Every little bit helps your slide motor work easier, and that'll make everything last longer. While I'm under here, I'll check on all the bolts, make sure nothing's broken or cracked. I'll look at all the mechanisms, make sure they're in good shape. You know, some of your slides will have electrical wiring. You want to check if it's not being frayed anywhere, loose. You know, just a general inspection. And usually I'll do this about twice a year. I like to use the same slide out dry lube on the rear scissor jacks as well. I find it works really well. So same thing, I'll use a wire brush and clean them all down, give them a good wash, and then apply it everywhere on there. At the same time, I can check all my nuts and bolts, make sure they're done up right and tight, not missing anything. And then for winding it up and down, if you get yourself a socket that's you can buy pretty well any RV store or on Amazon that'll allow you to hook up to an electric drill, it makes it a lot easier to deploy your jacks if you're not lucky enough to have power ones. So just once I lubricate it, I like to give it a good run up and down a couple times. That'll let the lubricant work all in there. And yeah, this stuff's great. It's dry lube, so then you know it's not going to pick up any dust and debris off the road, but it'll keep your rear jacks from corroding and make them work nice and smooth. The steps inside the RV is another spot to lubricate. And on the average RV step, there's a lot of hinges going on, so I just like to use the same dry lubricant. I just hit every little hinge in there. That'll make it operate smooth, and at the same time it'll keep anything from corroding or rusting. It's kind of a layer of protection. Okay, trailer bearings. I think you'll find most manufacturers and RV departments will say repack them every year. Myself, I usually go 2 years. I think because I'm always using them, they're always in motion. I think they can go a little longer. I think the worst thing for bearings is to have the thing sit for 6 or 8 months and all the grease slowly goes down to the bottom, and then half the grease is in the bottom, the other part's dry, and you take off suddenly and burn out your bearings. Anyway, usually every 6 months, 8 months, or a year, I have the bearing buddies in their easy lubes. So I'll take my grease gun and just pump a few pumps in there just to make sure it's topped up. But then usually every 2 years I'll take it in and have them take it apart and clean out the bearings, make sure the bearings are in good shape, replace the seals, and repack it with fresh grease. It's probably something I could do myself, but it's such a messy job, and I really don't have my own shop anymore as I'm a full-timer, so I don't want to be taking the wheels all apart in the campground working with a bunch of grease. So the place I take it to, $199, they do all four, they do a good job, so that's what I do as far as the wheel bearings go. Oh, another tip is every time I stop the trailer, I just have a habit, I go and I feel every hub and the wheel for any heat. And so if a bearing is failing, I might catch it early. Also, if a brake is dragging, I'll catch it early. So that's a good habit to be in if you're towing a trailer around. If you stop at a rest stop or the campground, just have a quick feel of the temperature. You'll get to know what's the proper temperature. Of course, when you're driving on the sunny side, it's always going to be a lot warmer, but you'll get a good feel for them. So then if a bearing does start to fail, you'll probably be able to catch it before it becomes a major problem. Okay, next I'm up on the roof here. I'm going to lubricate the antenna. It's your standard RV TV antenna. It's on most RVs. You're going to want to use a lubricant that is silicone. You don't want to use anything else. That's what the manufacturer says to use. Down inside that antenna there's actually a rubber seal. I think it's like a round O-ring, and if you use something else it could cause that O-ring to disintegrate, and then you'll have water leaking down into the rig. So make sure you use silicone. You're going to want to have the antenna down and spray some into this gearing in here. You want to get that gear, that's what pulls the antenna up and down. And down here there'll be a small cap to remove. You want to get some silicone in there. And then all around the edge here, I'm going to spray all underneath there. There we go. Get a good amount in there. Now what I'm going to do is go down and I'll just raise and lower and turn the antenna around a bunch of times so it'll work that silicone in there. Okay, here we are back in the rig, and there's the crank handle. You can see it says lubricate gears twice a year. So I'm going to have to take this off so that I can pull up the mechanism and get at the inside to lubricate. That's where the rubber O-ring is, and you want to get a little silicone in there to lubricate that so it doesn't dry out. So you want to take and get off this set screw, just an Allen key, and that'll drop all of that, and we'll go back up on the roof again. Okay, now you have to do a bit of disassembly. There's a couple C-clips to take off, and then that pulls these two pins out, and then you'll be able to lift that out of the way. There's a plastic top you can unscrew up there, and then we want to pull this right out like so. There we go. Now we can get a silicone in there, and give everything a good lube. There we go, and we shall put her all back together now. Okay, all back in place. So last thing I'll do is just give a squirt to any little connectors that are up there. I'll check my connections for the wiring. A few more places down here, and this looks like it could use some more Dicor sealant, so I'll probably put some of that on too. But that's basically all there is to lube up the antenna, and you want to do that twice a year. Keep it functioning smooth. Don't forget your awning. This is another spot that can often get overlooked because it's, you know, up out of the way, but they tend to attract a lot of water, especially when they're rolled up. So I like to just same thing, give each of the connections a little bit of that dry lithium grease. There's a lot of them, but I just go through and catch every little place where it turns, and that'll help it run nice and smooth, and in turn it'll help the motor run nice and smooth and take a lot of torque off the motor, and your awning will last a lot longer. There's nothing sucks more than when your awning motor decides to give it up with the awning out. Yikes. So once all the big parts are done, I'll go around and take some silicone spray, start hit all the locks and door hardware. Maybe give some squirt on the hinges there, just to help everything move freely on the rig. There's all kinds of little doodads to lubricate, and give the water heater catch a little shot. There's also some door hardware, locks there. Anything that moves, usually I'll just use some silicone spray, walk around the rig, give everything a quick lube. So if I do that every 6 months or so, everything runs smooth and keeps everything in good shape. So I hope that I've given you some ideas on how to lubricate your trailer. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers.